The topic that we're discussing right now is changes in the concepts of motherhood and fatherhood. If we talk about this topic brings your uh, unit family to an end. This is considered to be the last topic. As they say, last but not the least, if you have a look at the past papers, you have had questions on this, and you've even had 26 mark evaluative essay questions on this. And this, I'd say, is an easy pick. If you come across this question in your past papers, in your examination, you'd see how this is something that you can very easily write down on and score well. So the topic again is changes in the concept of motherhood and fatherhood, or in other words, how has the concept of motherhood and fatherhood changed over time? We'd explore some of societal factors, some economic, as well as cultural changes. Over these years, over the last few decades, if not centuries, you'd see how there's been a difference, how there's been a change in the society, the economy, the culture of our country, not only our country, even in the western part of the world as well. So we try to explore the societal, the economic, and the cultural changes that have reshaped, I repeat, reshaped the roles of mothers and fathers. Now, the question that, if like I typically put it, if we have a look at this through a sociological lens, we'd want to see if this reshaping of the roles of mothers and fathers, if it has been equal, or in other words, if there has been a change, or if there's been a change in terms of the if we talk about the change, if we talk about change in terms of motherhood and fatherhood, how is it that the roles that were performed by mothers have changed? And is it true when people or when feminists say that motherhood, even today, even to this date, stays pretty traditional, where it is expected of a female to not only bear a child, that is, give birth to a child, but at the same time, it is expected from a female to rear a child as well. So we try to examine a couple of theoretical perspectives over here, and and we'd see how different perspectives have uh, to offer an explanation regarding these changes in the concepts of motherhood and fatherhood. Now, to begin with, most societies have similar ideologies of motherhood and fatherhood. Most societies, if not all, we see them holding similar ideologies of motherhood and fatherhood and expect similar acts from anyone called a mother. That is, taking care of the child's needs. Motherhood is seen more critically as compared to fatherhood, as mothers are expected to do more of invisible labor around the house. This might include scheduling doctor's visit, making a meal plan, getting new clothes, getting stationery, helping with the homework, so on and so forth. Mothers are also usually expected to handle the house and husband simultaneously, which includes cooking and cleaning. Since many husbands also work jobs, their roles are more lax even in contemporary society. What does the word lax over here mean? Now, when we use the word lax over here in this particular context refers to refers to something that is not strict. So, since many husbands also work jobs, their roles are their roles are more lax, or their roles are more more carefree. They lack that strictness, that discipline, that control. So in other words, we're talking about how husbands, they have more of more of flexibility in terms of how they perform their roles of being a father, as compared to how motherhood for a female still to this date is very strict, is and then the societies, they view motherhood more critically as they view fatherhood. Now, having said that, let's take this ahead and talk about motherhood in a bit of detail. As we speak about motherhood, As we speak about motherhood, let's start off with this key thinker, Arfini. Arfini, in the year 2016, notes that after industrialization, there were separate roles of the breadwinner and the caregiver that were established, and typically the man took the role of earning, while the woman stayed home and took care of the house and children. Now, we're talking about the study that was conducted by Arfini in the year 2016. Now, if I try explaining this to you, many feminists claim that before industrialization, many feminists claim pre-industrialization or before industrialization, when your families used to be a unit of production, it was the husband, the wife, and children. Everyone worked together. Everyone worked together to help the house with finances, to help the household with the finances. However, it was after industrialization, where it was seen that the roles became separate, the roles became different for males and females. Because if I give you a quick little recap over here about the fifth thesis, after, according to many feminists, it was because of industrialization that uh, families were no more a unit of production, and instead of being a unit of production, they became a unit of consumption. When families were no more a unit of production, that meant one of the parent, that is either the husband or the wife, would eventually have to leave home to get a job. And when one of the parent had to leave home to get a job, it made more of sense for males to decide that they would want to leave home to go get a job. And when the male member of the household, where the father left home to go get a job, the wife was the wife remained back at home to look after the children. And this, over years, over decades, consequently led to males being tagged as the breadwinners and the females being tagged as a caretaker. I mean, we could go on and on this particular topic, but for now, I think this is enough. So, according to Arfini, the 20th century saw a good wife as someone who took to the role of staying at home and rearing children with ease and happiness, and who played both the emotional support for the husband and child, but also acted as a peacekeeper in the family. So, in the work that was done by Arfini tries explaining how how motherhood and fatherhood has been very different back in the past, especially if you talk about the last century. Now, remember, as I speak today, it's in 2025. This is the 21st century today. So, back in the 20th century, according to Arfini, a good wife was seen as someone who would take care of the role of staying at home and rearing children with ease and happiness, and who played both the emotional support for the husband and child, but also acted as a peacekeeper in the family. Taking this ahead, number two, let's talk about Talcott Parsons. Let's have a look at what Parsons has to say about the role of fathers and the role of mothers, and if this role and how this role has been over these years. So, Parsons, back in the 1960s, posed that the spouses were divided into expressive and instrumental roles, sexual division of labor. According to Talcott Parsons, males would perform the instrumental role of being a provider, of being a breadwinner, and females were expected to be performing an expressive role, or in other words, females were expected to cater to household responsibilities, cater to domestic arrangements, uh, cater to the emotional support. So, Parsons in the 1960s posed that the spouses were divided into expressive and instrumental roles, with the wives taking the expressive role of nurturing. He claimed that women were biologically programmed to be caregivers. However, in industrial societies in the 1950s and 1960s, when women began to work, the role of motherhood began to shift. Now, how is it that we say that the role of motherhood began to shift over here? We say that the role of motherhood began to shift because now, after women had started working, a mother, was not only expected to work outside home and contribute towards the finances of a household, but at the same time, she was also expected to look after the household. She was also expected to play or to perform all the domestic roles that she used to perform before she started working outside home. So this led to the idea of dual burden. This term dual burden is usually associated with the liberal feminist Anne Oakley. So in industrialized societies in the 1950s and 1960s, when women began to work, the role of motherhood began to shift as women picked up a dual burden, that is, working outside home for paid employment and homemaking simultaneously. The increase in female jobs, the increase in female jobs picked up due to economic crashes and the need for workers, alongside a growing improvement in female social status. So, according to Parsons, over these years, Parsons believed that, according to Parsons, yeah. So, I think that's enough. I mean, I don't want to drag this further. Number three, we could speak about Young and Wilmot, Michael Young and Peter Wilmot. If you recall, Michael Young and Peter Wilmot, they had conducted a research back in the 1950s on the working class families in London, in UK. And then they conducted a research again in the 1970s. And when they conducted the research in the 1950s, they saw that the conjugal roles that were performed by the male and the female partner within a household, they were segregated. So the term I'm using over here is a conjugal role. What does the word conjugal role over here mean? When I use the word conjugal role, I'm referring to the household roles that are performed by different partners. So according to Young and Wilmot, when they had conducted the research early in the 1950s, they found that there was a segregation in terms of the roles that were performed by male and female partners. In other words, there were different roles that were performed by males and there were different roles that were performed by females. However, when Young and Wilmot, Michael Young and Peter Wilmot, they conducted the research again in the 1970s. And I recall in 1973, they wrote a book. The name of the big book was The Symmetrical Family. According to Young and Wilmot, when they conducted the research again, they saw, they felt, they noticed that there was a shift that was there was a shift that was witnessed, and there was a shift from there was a shift from segregated conjugal roles to integrated conjugal roles. So we're talking about a shift from segregated conjugal roles to integrated conjugal roles. And when I use the word integrated conjugal roles over here, we're talking about joint conjugal roles. We're talking about a situation where there is no clear-cut distinction between the roles that are performed by husband and wife. So having said that, let's take this ahead. According to Young and Wilmot in the 1970s in the UK, conjugal roles and the strict differentiation between a mother's role and father's role began to blur. This means that a mother and a father are arguably, do not miss on this word, arguably, no longer set in stone and can be interchanged according to preferences, at least in the UK. Of course, at least in the UK, this still, after all these years, after good about 50 plus years, this might not stand out to be true in many other parts of the world, in many other less developed parts of the world. So number one, we spoke about Arfini. Number two, we spoke about Parsons. Number three, we discussed Young and Wilmot. Let's move on and talk about feminists. Now, if we have a look at what the feminists have to say about the role of motherhood and fatherhood, and under the heading of the changes in the concept of motherhood and fatherhood. Feminists argue that the roles of motherhood and fatherhood are patriarchal ideologies. Let me repeat, do not miss on this word. Let me highlight it as well. The word we're using over here is a patriarchal ideology. What does the word patriarchal over here mean? Patriarchal in this context is male domination. So feminists argue that the role of motherhood and fatherhood are patriarchal ideologies and should not be accepted readily, especially when discussing so-called biological roles of women and men. So if you talk about the feminist view on motherhood, according to many feminists, this is, if anything, a patriarchal ideology. This is, if anything, a social construction, and the males are the deep-rooted patriarchal ideology or the deep-rooted patriarchy within our societies have socially constructed the roles of mothers and fathers. Now, taking this ahead, if we speak about feminists, they argue that gender inequality to this date and age still persists. And even today, parenting has not been the same for males and females. Motherhood, even today, remains undervalued and burdensome. It's an it's a thankless, tedious, and a less satisfying job. However, with the now we're talking about all of this, I'm bringing in all of this under the heading of the feminist perspective. However, according to the feminist perspective, men still receive more of privilege in the workforce and their parenting roles as well. Now, having said that, if we take this ahead and discuss Chambers argues that motherhood is a concept that is based on the idea of putting your children's need first. I think this line explains it all. So, a mother is expected, a society expects of a mother to be sacrificing, to be compromising, and to always put the needs of the child before she puts her own needs. So Chambers argues that motherhood is a concept based on the idea of putting your children's need above your own self, and that working mothers are told to cut down on their jobs as not having matronly attention and affection is thought to affect children negatively and severely. In this way, motherhood is a constant sacrifice for the sake of raising children and taking care of the home and husband simultaneously. So, the role of motherhood changing, or the role of motherhood not changing. So, we have spoken about a couple of key thinkers over here. The last we spoke about was the feminist perspective, and then we brought in Deborah Chambers as well. And in her book, A Sociology of Family Life, Change and Diversity in Intimate Relations, in 2012, she examined the evolving dynamics of motherhood within contemporary societies. She felt that, or she noted that there had been an increased employment of mothers. She also noted that there was a rise in the divorce rate. She felt that there was still to this date an intensive parenting ideology that was stricter towards females, that is mothers, and the gender inequality that was there within a society, it still persists. Now, having said that, we see a 26 mark question: evaluate the view that motherhood is different today than in the past. You could possibly, this could possibly be your next CI evaluative question too. So, having said that, if we move on and we talk about the changes in the role of motherhood, and let's discuss Helen Wilkinson. Helen Wilkinson, if you recall, in 1994, coined the word genderquake. Now, when we use the word genderquake, the idea over here is that with the passage of time, we've seen how there are more females who are educated, and more educated females means there are more females that are financially independent. And the term genderquake, I mean, you want to understand this easily, remember an earthquake, how everything is bound to move and shake and brings in a difference or makes a difference. So Wilkinson in the year 1994 claims that there has been a gender quake and women no longer prioritize families over their own wants and needs and financial security. There's evidence posed that educated women are beginning to start motherhood later in life. So we're talking about females getting more educated. We're talking about females being more career oriented over here. And motherhood without a husband is more common, especially with the options of adoption or artificial insemination, that is new reproductive technology, NRT. The notion of needing a husband is rejected by many females, mainly in the West. Remember to connect Helen Wilkinson's stance to the idea of genderquake. There's an increase in women staying childless by choice. I mean, we've used the word childless over here, but the feminist Catherine Hakem had advised to change to replace the word childless with the word child free, because according to her, the word childless in itself carries a negative connotation. So there's an increase in women staying childless by choice because there is lesser societal pressure to give birth and carry on the family. So there were push factors, there were pull factors. You could You could know more on this under the heading of the postmodernist perspective on family. Having said that, if we talk about the radical feminist stance, the radical feminist stance on the changes in the concept of motherhood and fatherhood. Now, if we take this ahead and discuss the radical feminist stance, some females have begun to see motherhood as oppressive, according to radical feminists, to the point that they have started rejecting the notion of motherhood completely, posing that it further posing that it furthers gender inequality in the workplace and takes away a woman's independence. Examples of this could be how women have to take a maternity leave, which makes them fall behind their male co-workers. So we are talking about how radical feminists. If you talk about radical feminists, you cannot miss on Shulamit Firestone, and her infamous book, The Dialect of Sex. Shulamit Firestone, the Canadian feminist, wrote this book in the 1970s. She argued that childbirth and as well as motherhood kept women in a subordinated position within a society. So this, I believe, is more than enough for you all for this particular topic. Let's quickly hop on to fatherhood now. And as we speak about fatherhood in 2010, in 2010, Miller argued that the role of fatherhood is not as strict as its counterpart, which is motherhood, and that a lot of men get away with being absentee or emotionally unavailable without any repercussions, as it is not seen as their job. For example, it is a mother's duty, or it is considered to be a mother's duty to take care of all the hospital visits, dentist visits, parent teacher meetings, so on and so forth. So, uh, Miller in the year 2010. Taking this ahead, if you talk about comparison, if you talk about cross-cultural comparison, if you speak about South Asian societies like a Pakistani society, you see a great father today, even today, is seen as is a person, is a man, a father is considered to be a great father, and this title is only bestowed upon men that take the economic burden of the family onto themselves and provide for the family in the form of monetary means. Anything less is often seen as shameful. Men are not associated with emotional stability in the way mothers are. So we spoke about Miller, and we spoke about Miller's stance on this and the work that Miller did in 2010. He wrote a book with the name Making Sense of Fatherhood, Gender, Caring, and Work. This was a stance, this was through a Western lens. However, on the other hand, if we speak about a South Asian society, so in a South Asian society, it is expected of a man to just be a provider. It is considered to be okay if a man is not emotionally present. It is considered to be okay if a father is not contributing towards childcare. It is considered to be okay if a man just, or if a father just wants to be there present for his child, be it a male or female, in good times. It is considered to be okay if a man is if a man only spends time with his child when it comes to playing with the child. So we spoke about the Western world, we spoke about South Asian societies. Even in more industrialized and Western societies, such as the UK, going back to the UK now, many people subscribe to the way of thinking that a man should be the breadwinner and not a nurturing figure for children. Many people believe that the idea of a man changing diapers, helping with homework, etc., is unnatural and not his job. Most men, if they want Most men, if they would like to spend more time with their children, are unable to do so due to working hours, according to sociologist Gray. This may be linked back to capitalism and the oppressive nature of workforce. So we spoke about fatherhood, and we spoke about uh, what the different stances were that were held by Miller, that were held by uh, Gray, We also spoke about how fatherhood is, how or what the expectation of fatherhood is from a South Asian society. Now, the million dollar question over here is, has this changed? So, if we speak about the changes in fatherhood, there are signs that men are taking more active role in the lives of their children in terms of staying at home and interacting with them. Now, I would want to hint you all, you could go back to the unit or you could go back to the topic conjugal roles and you'd see how there is evidence, how there is sociological material there that would help you understand how men are today spending more time with their children as compared to their parents or as compared to the men in the past. This shows a positive change in the role of a father who actually stereotyped for being emotionally absent. According to Beck, in the year 1992, Beck claims that men are dependent on their children for joy and purpose as their jobs no longer give them a sense of identity, and that many fathers insist on time with their children. So, we're talking about the changes in fatherhood. We're talking about the changes in fatherhood. Taking this ahead, there has been an increase in single fatherhood, especially in the United Kingdom and USA, an increase in single fatherhood. Now, this is a term that you do not get to hear very often. You must have heard of single motherhood a lot, but today, with the passage of time, there has been an increase. There has been an increase in single fatherhood, especially in the West. So, taking this ahead, there has been an increase in single fatherhood, especially in the UK and the United States of America. Men are taking responsibility for their children's emotional as well as physical health. If you speak about the United Kingdom, over the past 2 decades, there has been a notable increase in single father families. If we talk about statistics over here, back in the back in the early 2000s, or if I'm not mistaken, it was 1999, there were approximately 330,000 single fathers, which rose to 400,000 single fathers, and this is an increase of around 20%, an increase of around 20 to 22%. So, if you talk about if you want to know about more of statistics, there has been as of 2023, which is not very old or obsolete. As of 2023, there are over 3.18 million single parent families in the United Kingdom, which has again increased over the past years. So, taking this ahead, according to Risman in the year 1986, Risman in 1986 poses that the notion that women are more nurturing should be abandoned. Now, what happens is, and this is many feminists complain on this as well, motherhood or the notion of, let's not talk about motherhood over here, the idea of child rearing or the idea of the upbringing of a child is um, tagged to females, or rather say it's biologically tagged to females. And according to Risman in the year 1986, this should be abolished. See, biologically, it makes a lot of sense if someone says a female bears a child, that is, gives birth to a child, but there shouldn't be any sort of biological connection to the rearing part, right? On one end, I use the word bearing. Bearing starts with a B for Barcelona, and on the other end, I use the word rearing. Rearing starts with R with Russia. So, according to Risman, child rearing should not be associated with females and females alone. People should start understanding that fathers can play the roles traditionally seen as matronly and take care of their child's needs as well. The idea of biological differences between sexes in terms of child rearing are now fairly outdated. So we spoke about changes in motherhood first, and then we spoke about in the changes in fatherhood. So I hope this has been helpful. I'd like to reiterate: do not miss on the past papers. Open your past papers, have a look, and you'd come across a couple of questions on this particular topic. You go through them, and it is going to help you. So I hope this has been helpful. Thank you.